Hey friends, it's Corey from Hey Let's Make Stuff. Welcome back to my Illustrator series for SVG designers and crafters. Today we're going to start making simple illustrations using shapes and lines in Illustrator. Even if you're not an artist, you can use these simple tools to make all sorts of different illustrations to use in your SVG files. If you found this video but haven't watched the ones before this, I would highly recommend that you go do that. These videos build on one another and you might be a little bit lost going through this video. I also recommend that you use keyboard shortcuts in Adobe Illustrator. I actually have a free printable that is specifically designed for SVG designers and crafters, so it has all the keyboard shortcuts you need and nothing you don't. I felt like the easiest way to show you how to make different illustrations would be to just make a bunch of different illustrations. And along the way, we will learn tips and tricks and different tools that you can use to make SVG designs. This is designed to be fun. Your illustrations don't need to look exactly like mine do. The idea is to just get you used to drawing with shapes and lines so that you can make whatever images you want to make. Next week, we're going to be going into making illustrations with the Adobe Illustrator pen tool. Now that is a little bit more advanced, but it does build on what we're learning today. So make sure you have what we're learning today down before you do next week's lesson. If you're ready to get started, let's hop into Adobe Illustrator. Before we get started here in Illustrator, I do want to apologize if there is a little bit of noise in the background today. We had a tree that fell down in the lot next to our house, and they are chopping it up. I think they are done with the chainsaws, but if there is still some noise going on, I do apologize for it. Let's start drawing in Illustrator. In a lot of the other lessons, we have started with a circle, so we are going to use that circle to make a cookie. So go ahead and click L, and that will give us our circle tool. And then I'm going to draw my circle here. I'm going to use these align tools up at the top to get it to the center of my screen, so I'm going to align it vertically and align it horizontally. Now let's change the color of our circle to a cookie color. We talked about colors last week. I'm going to use the drop down in the control panel up here in the upper left, and I'm going to choose sort of a medium brown. Now my cookie has a black stroke on it right now. You can see that up in these drop downs. I've got a brown cookie with a black stroke going around it. You can also see it in the toolbar on the left, brown cookie, black stroke. I don't really want that black stroke, so I'm going to use that drop down, and I'm going to click the no stroke button here. It's white with a red line through it. That's the swatch for an empty stroke. Now we want to add some chocolate chips. Right now we have our big cookie piece selected, so I'm going to click V to get back to our selection tool. I'm going to click off of the cookie so that I don't have anything selected. Then I'm going to go back to that circle tool, L, and I'm going to choose a darker color here. I'm going to choose like a dark brown for my chocolate chips. And now I'm just going to draw some chocolate chips. I'm going to hold down the Shift key so that all of my chocolate chips are perfectly round. And you can add as many or as few chocolate chips as you would like, whatever sizes you would like, just like this. Make a big guy there, and another one here. And now we have a chocolate chip cookie, but I'm going to go over to my layers panel and show you that right now I don't have any compound paths, which is, as you've learned, really important to making SVG files. Now, if I brought this into a cutting machine software right now, each of these chocolate chips would cut separately, which we don't want. So I'm going to go ahead and get back to my selection tool, which is V, and I'm going to click while holding down Shift, and I can select all of these chocolate chips. And then I'm going to use our keyboard shortcut to make a compound path, which is Command or Control 8. Now I have a single compound path over here in the layers panel that has all of the chocolate chips, and they will cut in this layout. I'm also going to select my big cookie piece and make that a compound path as well, Command or Control 8. And now you can see our layers panel looks good here. We have one layer with two compound paths. And that's how you make a cookie. Next up, let's make a ruler. Rulers are great for all sorts of school and kid-themed SVG files, and they're pretty easy to make. So let's go ahead and change our color here. Let's change it to yellow. Now I'm going to use the rectangle tool, which is keyboard shortcut M, or as I like to say, mectangle, so I can remember that that's an M. And I'm going to draw sort of a long ruler shape here. Now let's learn to use a little tool that I really love here in Illustrator. It's called Live Corners. So you could have this rectangle with these very sharp corners, but these little dots inside the corners allow you to actually round your corners. Now, if I click on one, it's going to round all the corners in my project. So I'm going to click and drag this one in a little bit. And you can see here, I can drag it up. I can make them very small. I can make them all the way around. So I'm just going to round them a little bit. If you click on one and then click on it again, you can then just move that one. So I will use these tools a lot to manipulate corners within Illustrator. And then if I click off of it, you can see the rounded corners. I think it just looks a little bit more professional and a little bit more designed just with those rounded corners. Now we need to add some lines. So I'm going to choose the line tool, which is the backslash key. So right now I have no stroke and a yellow fill, which is not going to work for a line. So I'm going to choose a black stroke and I'm going to give myself that empty fill. Now I can draw a black line and I'm going to hold down the shift key just like this so that it will be straight. If you hold down the shift key, it moves at increments. So I'm going to hold down the shift key and make myself my first line. I'm also going to bump up the stroke. I can do that up here in the control panel. I can also do it over here in that properties panel. So I'm going to increase that stroke just a little bit to make it a little bit thicker. Now I'm going to create another line that's a little bit shorter next to it. Again, holding down that shift key. So I could create all of the next lines individually, or I can sort of duplicate them. And there are a couple ways to do it. So the first way is to just do a copy and paste like you would in pretty much any other program. So that's Command or Control C to copy, and then Command or Control V to paste. Then I can go ahead and bring it up here and let's put it next to it. So that's one way. Another way is you can hold down Option if you're on a Mac or Alt if you're on a PC, and you can actually just drag a second one. So let's do that one more time. I'm just clicking down Option on my Mac, Alt if you're on a PC, and then just dragging it and I get a second one just like that. Now I could do that here and create another one, but actually I just want to select all of what we have and copy it entirely. So I'm going to select all. I'm holding down the Shift key to select all, and then I'm going to use that Option key and I'm just going to drag out another set. And I'm going to select even more here. I'm going to use that Option key, again, Alt if you're on a PC, and drag out even more. All right, and then I'm just going to do these here. I'm going to Option or Alt, and I'm just going to drag out another set here. Now, because I can't fit another set of hash marks here, I am just going to go ahead and make my ruler just a little bit shorter here. So these look like they're aligned pretty well, but let's make sure. So a lot of times when I'm working in Illustrator, I will want to select all but one thing. So right now I'm just going to drag over and I'm going to select everything. So I have all of my little markings here and the ruler. Now I want to distribute these evenly, but if I try and do that with the ruler selected, it's not going to do it properly. So let me undo that. And now I want to keep all of this selected, but I don't want the ruler. So if I click Shift and I click the ruler, that basically unselects whatever you're clicking on. So I will do this a lot when I have a lot of things I want to select, but I don't want to select maybe the background. I will select everything, and then I will hold down Shift and just click on the thing I don't want, and that will leave just what I want selected. Now, if I use this Distribute Align tool, you can see that everything shifted right into place. Now, because these are still stroked lines and not shapes, we need to expand them and basically turn them into very tall, skinny rectangles. So we have them all selected. I'm going to go up to Object, Expand. As far as I know, there is no shortcut for this, even though I use it all the time. I could probably create one, but you'll go up to Object, Expand, and you want to make sure to choose both Fill and Stroke. And now I'm going to zoom in here, and you can see that instead of lines, I actually have basically very tall rectangles. Then once again, if I open up that Layers panel, you'll see that each of these is its own individual piece underneath our layer. We want to turn this into a compound path, so I'm going to use that compound path shortcut, which is Command or Control 8. That turns it into a compound path. I'm going to turn my rectangle into a compound path as well. The Layers panel looks good. I've got my 2 compound paths and nothing else. And that's how you make a ruler. Next up, let's make a sun, and this is using one of my absolute favorite tools in Illustrator, which is the Rotate tool. So I'm going to click L for circle, and I'm going to draw a circle in the center of my artboard, just like that. Then I'm going to choose the Rectangle tool, M, and I'm going to draw a very tall and thin rectangle above my circle, just like this. Now, if you go back to the Select tool, V, you can actually pick that up and center it with your circle here. So I want it just above my circle, just like that. Now we're going to use the Rotate tool, which is absolutely one of my favorite tools in Illustrator. So I'm going to choose the Select tool, V, and I'm going to click on our little rectangle. Then I'm going to click R to activate the Rotate tool. Now I'm going to hold down my Option key on my Mac. It will be Alt if you're on a PC. And I'm going to find the center of my circle. So it should show up here as center, and I'm going to click. So I'm holding down Option, you might have Alt, and I'm going to click on the center. This will open up this rotate box. A circle is 360 degrees, so if you are choosing an image to rotate around a circle, you want to choose a number that goes into 360 evenly. So for this one, I'm going to choose 18 degrees, and then instead of clicking OK, click Copy. Now you can see here, I'm starting to make my sun. Now here's where the magic happens. On your keyboard, we're going to use duplicate. On a Mac, it's Command D. On a PC, it is Control D. And you're just going to hit that combination until you go all the way around your circle. So watch this. I'm hitting Command D, 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 all the way around my circle. Check that out. This should work properly as long as you have clicked in the center of your circle for that rotate tool and you have chosen a number that goes into 360 evenly. I'm going to get back to my selection tool by clicking V, and then I'm going to select all. You can drag, or you can use the keyboard shortcut Command or Control A to select all. And then I'm going to make this into a compound path by clicking Command or Control 8. Now, if I go over here to my layers panel, you'll see that I have a single compound path. Next up, we're going to create like a boho rainbow, and this will get you really familiar with using that line tool. So again, the keyboard shortcut for line is that backslash, and I'm going to draw a line, toward the bottom of my artboard here, just like this. Now I'm going to increase my stroke. So I'm going to the stroke drop down up here, and I'm going to choose a color. So let's just choose this very bright pink. I'm going to increase my stroke a lot. I actually did this before, and I'm going to increase it all the way to 50. So now I have this very, very bold stroke. Now we're going to switch to the anchor point tool, which is Shift C, and this will allow us to manipulate those anchor points. And if you're like, Corey, what are you talking about? Please go back to the anchor points, handles, and paths lesson because I'm going to be going into this more and more, and I need you to understand what I'm actually doing here. So with this anchor point tool, I can grab the center of my path here, and I can click and drag it up to create sort of an arc shape. So I want to make this whole thing a little bit rounder. So I'm actually going to scroll up just a little bit, and I'm going to pull on these handles. I'm going to pull out on each of these handles so that we are pulling more toward an arc shape. And these are supposed to be kind of messy. They don't need to be perfect here, but we've got kind of an arc shape here. Now I don't love the square corners of my path here. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the stroke panel. If you don't see this, go up to Window, Stroke. And in the stroke panel, I can choose the type of cap. So basically what is at the end of my line. Right now it is a butt cap, so it's basically flat, but I can choose a round cap, and that is just so much cuter. We'll make that the first part of our rainbow. I'm going to create a second line inside the first. It's going to match the style I already have selected here, but I am going to switch the color. So let's make this one yellow. And then I'm going to use that anchor point tool again, Shift C, and I'm going to be able to drag this up and create that second rainbow. I'm going to pull these handles out a little bit, just like this. Again, doesn't need to be even. Now let's make this a dotted line. Go over here back to the stroke panel and click this checkbox for dashed line. To make circles, we're going to set our dash at 0 points. And then we're going to set our gap larger than our weight. So right now I have a 50-point stroke. So I'm going to just go ahead and try an 80-point gap, and let's see what happens. Oh, we've got circles. Okay, this was perfect. I love it. Then you can continue to create these layers of your rainbow. So again, like I said, it's going to match what I did last, which is kind of confusing, right? So I'm actually going to press the letter I on my keyboard, and then I'm going to click on the pink arc here. And that I is the eyedropper tool, and it basically is sort of a matching tool. It will change whatever you have selected to whatever you click, and just working with this line is a little bit easier. This one I'm going to go ahead and make it a little bit thicker. Let's go ahead and make it 70. Then I'm going to use the anchor point tool, and I'm going to create that arc here, just a little bit thicker, just like that. Now, I don't love how close I am over here, so I'm actually going to choose the direct selection tool, that's A, and the direct selection tool allows us to click on a single anchor point and move it. So I'm going to click on that anchor point, and I'm just going to pull it in a little bit, and pull this one in a little bit as well, just like that. Then I'm going to click off of it and click back onto it so I can change the color. Let's make this one blue. And then I can do the same. I can create one more, just like this. I'm going to make this one skinnier. Let's make it 30. And then let's go ahead and make it a different color. Make this one green. Then I'm going to use that anchor point tool, Shift C, to pull up in the center here. Again, round it out just a little bit. And then I'm going to do one more. So I'm going to make this line, and I'm going to use that anchor point tool to bring it up here in the center. Pull it up a little bit. And for this one, I'm also going to do a dashed line. And I feel like these dots maybe are too far apart. So right now I have a 30-point weight, a 0-point dash. I'm going to make this more like a 50-point gap and see what happens. Okay, you can see how here on the bottom, it's not even. So one little thing you may want to try clicking is over here in the stroke panel. We have two different ways to render how this works. So the first is we are preserving the exact dash and gap lengths, whereas the one on the right here aligns the dashes to the corners and paths, basically making it look a little bit better. So often I will use that second one here to make sure that everything is even. I'm going to click off of it and click back on so I can change the stroke color. We're going to go with a darker pink, just like that. So now I'm going to select everything, Command A for select all. You can see that all of these are actually still lines, right? We have this line going through these yellow dots, for example. So we need to expand it and turn these all into shapes. So the first step is to go to Object, Expand Appearance. And it won't look like anything happened, but you can't do the regular expand until you've expand the appearance. There is a lot that I could go into there, but just know if you can't click expand, but you can click expand appearance, try expand appearance first, and then it will give you the expand tool later. And once you do that, you can make sure that fill and stroke is checked for your expand box here and expand. And now you can see that everything is its own shape. Now we need to make each of these colors a compound path, so I am going to select the first, Command or Control 8. Now this is one of those instances that I talked about several lessons ago, where if you make something a compound path, it may just disappear and you're like, what happened to it? So this is an example. You think that my top arc here has disappeared. If I click off of it, you can't see it at all, but it is still there. So I'm going to select it and I'm going to change the color of the fill this time, not the stroke, the fill back to where I started. So I'm going to turn it back to that magenta color. It doesn't happen on the dots. So I'm going to make that Command 8 or Control 8 to make a compound path. Works. I'm going to make this one a compound path. I will go ahead and make that blue again. Same thing with the green guy, make him a compound path and change him back to green. And then I will make the purple a compound path as well. Now, if I go to my layers panel, you'll see that I have 5 compound paths under my single layer, which is exactly what I want. If you want to make more rainbows, you can play around more with that stroke tool. You can make dashed lines. You can layer some of these layers on top of each other. This is just a really fun way to learn how to play around with that stroke panel. Next up, let's make a firecracker. So we're going to start with the rectangle tool, M for rectangle. And I'm going to choose sort of a red color up here. And I'm going to draw a rectangle, sort of the body of our firecracker. The easiest way to make a triangle is actually to use the star tool. So if you go over to the toolbar on the left and click and hold, it will open up a menu with more options here. So I'm going to choose the star tool. Then I'm just going to click anywhere on my artboard and it will open up the star menu. Now here, if you make a 3-pointed star, it's a triangle. You don't have to worry about these radius options with a triangle. Just go ahead and click OK. Oh, beautiful triangle. So easy. Let's go ahead and make our triangle blue. I'm going to drag it over here and then I'm going to rotate it. So if you hover over a corner, just outside the corner, you'll see the rotate icon. Hold down the shift key and you can rotate it so that it will work with our firecracker. Then I'm going to make it much bigger here, just like that. With the star tool selected, click anywhere on the artboard and let's make a 5-pointed star. And you can just keep these radiuses the same. You can change them if you'd like. And now we have a little blue star. I'm going to select my select tool. That's V, so I can drag it down here. I'm actually going to change this to white, and then I'm going to rotate it so that it's sort of straight here on my board. There we go. Then I'm going to copy and paste and make 2 more of them. One there. We'll make one more and we'll make him a little bit bigger. We'll put him in the middle, just like that. You can use those alignment tools to make sure they are spaced properly. So I'm going to use this distribute tool, just like that. Then I'm going to center the whole thing in the middle of my firecracker. I also noticed that my blue triangle isn't quite centered, so I'm going to drag that down and center it with my red rectangle. Now, I don't like all the hard corners we have going on here, so let's use those live corners again. So I'm going to select all, Command or Control A, and then I'm going to click A to get to that direct selection tool. Now you can see everywhere that these live corners live. They live in the corners of this rectangle and the corners of our triangles, but they also are on all of the points of the star as well as these interior points on the star. So I'm just going to choose one at random because remember, if I change one, I can change them all. And I'm going to click and drag it just a little bit. So you can see I can make it really round or I can just make it a little bit round, just like that. Now, if I click off of it, V, I have a much more pleasing design. Now we're going to draw the tail behind the rocket, and we're going to use the brush tool. I don't love the brush tool for SVGs, as you'll see, but I do use it on occasion. Generally, I would prefer to use the pen tool, which we're going to talk about next week, but sometimes it's easier for projects like this just to pull out that brush tool. But I don't want you necessarily to think that the brush tool is going to be the way that you illustrate things, because it can be very, very clunky in the way that it renders those anchor points and handles and paths. And a lot of times it will have so many nodes that you can't actually use it on a cutting machine. So I'm going to show you kind of what to do in this situation, but generally I don't use the brush tool a lot unless I'm trying to make sort of shapes like the one I'm making here. To select the brush tool, we're going to click B, and that selects the brush tool. You can see over here in the toolbar that it's selected. I'm actually going to double click on it, and that will bring up the paintbrush options. Now, especially if you're not good at art, I would crank the fidelity all the way to smooth. This will basically have Illustrator smooth out the path that you're about to draw. So right now, again, we just have a fill selected and no stroke, so we need to swap those. To easily swap them, you can go down to the toolbar at the bottom of the color here, and you can click that little swappy arrow, and that will swap your stroke and your fill. And then let's increase our stroke a little bit so that we have a nice sized sort of tail coming out of our firecracker. Now you're basically going to draw that sort of tail shape using your mouse. So I'm going to do it like this. You may have to do it a few times to kind of get what you're looking for, but did you see how it sort of snapped to something much smoother than I drew? That's what the fidelity does. So that was my first try. That was actually really good. I drew it several times for the blog post, but I feel like that worked pretty well. Now, again, if I click on it with my selection tool, this ends up being a line and not a shape. So we need to expand it. So I'm going to go to Object, Expand Appearance, Object, Expand, and now I have a shape. Now, if I click on my direct selection tool here, I'm going to zoom in. You can see that I have so many anchor points, especially on the inside of curves. I don't know what is up with the brush tool, but it just creates so many anchor points no matter what you do. So on a simple shape like this, we can use that Simplify tool. We use this on a font in an earlier tutorial. So I'm going to have this selected. So I'm actually going to click V to get back to my selection tool, make sure it's selected. I'm going to go to Object, Path, Simplify. This will open up this little slider, and you can choose how much fidelity you want to that original image. Like I mentioned in that other lesson, you can click on these more options. It's 3 dots here, and you can see where we started. I started with 164 points here in the center. Now I have 34 points, much easier to cut. If I click on the direct selection tool A and look at it, you can see I have way fewer points. There's still probably more points than I would like down here, but overall, this is a much more cuttable piece. Now we need to make all of the parts of our project compound paths. So I'm going to take the tail and the nose cone, and I'm going to make those a single compound path, Command 8 or Control 8. I'm going to make the red piece its own compound path, and I'm going to make these 3 stars their own compound path. Now if I go over here to my layers panel, you'll see that I have my single layer with 3 compound paths and nothing else. So that was 6 examples of different illustrations that you can make inside Adobe Illustrator. If you found this video really helpful and you like this style, let me know, because I can maybe do more videos like this showing you how to make specific types of images so that you can use those tips and tricks to make images of your own. Next week, we're going to be going into the pen tool, and I'm going to keep it pretty basic, but I do want to give you an overview of how that works because it really can take your illustrations to the next level. I hope you found this video helpful and informative in helping you learn Adobe Illustrator. If so, I would really love for you to give this video a like. Follow me for more Illustrator, Cricut, sublimation, and laser content. I'll see you next week.